Hello, friends. Judy Herman here, author of Beyond Messy Relationships, and I'm also a mental health therapist. And in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm going to give you some tips that I think are going to be very valuable. Of course, this is not a substitute for professional counseling services. It's psychoeducational only. But this is going to help for you to understand there's 3 secrets to balancing mental and relationship wellness. And I'm going to give you 3 of those secrets. So first of all, there's awareness. There's awareness of neuroscience. And there's a simple way actually to be aware of neuroscience. And what mental wellness is, according to one of my mentors, Dr. Dan Siegel, that mental health is the integration of the different parts of the brain. He talks about what you call vertical integration and horizontal integration, but I won't go into all those details at this point. But when the right and left hemispheres are connecting, like you have the logic on one side, you have creativity on the other, when you're able to use and connect those parts of the brain, that those neural pathways are happening, and you take deep breaths in order for that to happen, that is a really good thing to do. So sometimes it's just a very simple and profound awareness of neuroscience, how our brain works. That's why it is so very important to be grounded in your past history, because so much of the relating that we do, and when we get into that mode of fight, flight, or freeze, that's the reptilian part of the brain. And when we are trying to argue with someone while we are in the reptilian part of the brain, it just doesn't work. Instead, we get escalated. But if we can take deep breaths and we can make sense and slow that amygdala and all those firing, neurons that are happening in the moment is kind of lit up, we need to connect. We need to connect that, and the best way to do that is through deep breathing. And I'm going to show you that in a moment, but first I want to go through these 3 things. So the awareness of neuroscience on a very basic level even can make so much difference. There's intentional decisions. That's the second one, is intentional decisions to test beliefs. Now, we can be in 2 different states of being. And this goes back even to some other ancient wisdom and even with other religions. But you can be in a state of suffering. That would be those emotions that we don't like, depression, anxiety, frustration, fear, whatever. That's a state of suffering versus a state of power. Well, so if we can listen to whatever state of suffering that we are in, take our deep breaths, let them be, as I talk about in my book, Beyond Messy Relationships, I talk about emotions being temporary messengers to your soul. So we need to pay attention to when we are in that state of suffering, if something happens and we have pain around it. We need to take a deep breath and learn, grow from it, be with it, but don't linger in it for too long. Because what happens when you linger in it too long, it's so easy. And again, going back to brain science, neuroscience, we can make up some stories and the narrative about that suffering. And so it's not the actual incident at all that's making us suffer. It's the narrative about that. And so what we want to do is we want to have a narrative that is true and life-giving. And so that's going into a place then of power and of peace. And that is, to me, that's like, okay, we got these 2 polar things. We can handle that, right? So first is awareness of neuroscience and awareness of those 2 states of being, suffering and power, but in an intentional decision that when you are in suffering is to ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really true? Sometimes you need somebody to help you interpret that and test those beliefs, because those beliefs can be so like cinder blocks in your soul. Now, number 3, first we have awareness, and secondly we have intentions, and then we have number 3, risk of growing into the unknown. Oh my goodness. Yes, as human beings, we all have these needs, right? We need certainty, we need security. But in order to live by faith, in order to go into this risk of growth, which we are all called to do as human beings, we need to face the unknown, right? We get grounded in our truth, grounded in truth, period, so that we have the proper and truthful narrative about whatever situation is happening, and then take a risk of growth. That your risk might be something like, I'm going to make that counseling appointment today. Or your risk might be, especially if you're living with a resistant husband, let's say, and you wanted to get couples counseling, you wanted to improve your marriage. But your risk might be, I'm going to call. I'm not going to wait till he's not resistant. That might be your risk of growth. It might be that you're holding yourself back from your own growth because you're fearful of the divide that it's going to cause in your marriage or in your partnership. Or even, like, we could apply this in other areas of your life, right? But I just wanted to share with you those 3 secrets to balancing your mental and relational awareness. Number 1 is awareness of neuroscience and the parts of the brain and what's going on here. Intentional decisions to test those beliefs, suffering versus power, and then the stories around all of that. And then the risk of growing into the unknown, living by faith. So here's what happens. I just want to give you a couple of illustrations because we get so caught up in our own perspectives. So yeah, this is a stress ball of the globe, of the world. But if we could just represent this by, you know what, this is our own perspective. It's rather small. We live in a small world, right? And we want to grow and we want to expand because that's what the human brain actually is designed to do. We're supposed to bust through some of these limited beliefs. But then also, life is a movement, right? Life is a movement from suffering into power, suffering to or chaos to calm. We did a group about that earlier. And so life is a movement, and I do see life and relationships as dances. But we need to take some time. Take some time to breathe in air. And if you just breathe in all the way to the top of your lungs and slowly breathe out. It slows down things so that you can get some perspective and some movement. And instead of reacting, you can be purposeful for choosing responses and taking that risk of growth. So I'm so glad that you joined me. I'm going to say, I see Beth watching. Hey, good to see you. And feel free, if this resonates with you, yes, please like, share, comment. It fills me to know somebody's watching, right? But if somebody you're thinking about, you think, I want to share this, do that. I would love for you to do that. What's your next step? You can take the relationship stress quiz on my website, judycounselor.com. And also there's an Ask Judy button on the very side of my website pages. You can just click on that, record a question, and I will address it, or record a comment if you would like. I would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for joining me. And remember, you are so worth it. You're so worth knowing, choosing your own responses, taking risks of growth, but being aware. Forgot to tell you something. You might have figured it out already. Awareness, intentionality, and risks. That means you're breathing in fresh air, AIR, and it's a bunch of this is in my book as well. Not just an intense and dramatic memoir, but there's some methodology, there's some insights that you will get about your life. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and thank you so much for joining me. And you have an awesome weekend. All right, bye-bye.